watch some Doctor Who. Do you want to join me? I've got a friend to pick a story. They've also told me what it is they particularly like about this story. So as we watch, I'll chat to you and tell you a few thoughts and facts and observations. We're going to see, by concentrating on the positive and the things to love and celebrate, the happy times and places, what it is they might have identified as being the particular strong points of this adventure. So let's go and set up. And while I'm doing that, let's meet our special guest.
Hello, my name's Chris Boyle and I'm a full-time A-level law teacher and an incredibly part-time comedian and podcaster. The story that I've chosen is The Day of the Daleks, and the reason I've chosen that is because I do have problems with the Third Doctor. He should be my favourite. He's played by Jon Pertwee, he wears velvet jackets, he does incredibly complicated fight sequences whilst holding a glass of whiskey, and yet more often than not I find him a bit pompous and a bit superior, and it gets on my nerves. So I'm going to see if I can find the positives in a Third Doctor story.
Well, welcome to Happy Times and Places. I've got no idea how this is going to go. You're watching Doctor Who with me, either as a video, possibly alongside the episodes, or as an audio, again, possibly alongside the episodes. I guess you'll work out how you like to do it best, which might be not at all. And I'll work out how to do it best, but how to do it best. But I guess that's all part of the journey that we're on, seeing as we're going nowhere in any other sense. I, like you, I'm sure, are currently in lockdown. So that wasn't entirely a stumble-free introduction, was it? Well, that's how it's going to be. This is unrehearsed and off the top of my head, and let's see what happens. That blather has hopefully given you a chance to line up Day of the Daleks, episode 1, however you are watching it. I am watching it on the official BBC DVD, which is available, and you should buy. And here we are. We're going to press play in 3, 2, 1. Well, there was quite a gap between me doing that at the start of the episode, but I guess that will happen. Welcome. I'm watching Day of the Daleks, a story that, like many Doctor Who stories, I first discovered through the Target novel, and it's one of the better Target novels because Terence Dicks, who was later doing them, I think, once every other day, was one of a bevy of writers and seemed to have a bit more time and a higher word count. And it's a great book. Opens with a character called Moni, who we see later as Monia on some sort of journey, but not here. This opens, I think, better for the TV series in the haunted house. So it's quite nice. It looks like it's going to be. Well, you get the idea that it's. Well, certainly, maybe I'm misremembering them from the book. You get the sort of mystery that has he seen a ghost, and actually it's a ghost from the future. Wilfred Carter here as Styles, one of many pompous bureaucrats we see in Doctor Who of this era, although he is a pompous bureaucrat who is apparently the man who is going to save the world, and I quite like that he's he's actually no saint. And this is Tim Condren, who's a stuntman actually. We're out of ghost story territory immediately. That's a man in fatigues, so and with a futuristic gun. So, and it was curious. I remember it being slightly confusing because I think the book very early on, or this part of it, starts with a gorilla running through the forest or running through the grounds, and it's Guerrilla, Guer. But it confused me because it had the Ogrons on the cover who looked like gorillas. And I mean, I was reading these books before I was ready to, really, because I was so fascinated by Doctor Who. I read books that had loads of words and situations I didn't fully understand, which meant I then read the books again later, and perhaps again later still. And I remember not quite understanding the difference between a guerrilla and a gorilla until I said to Mum, I thought guerrilla was spelt like that. She went, oh yes, a guerrilla is a sort of, soldier freedom fighter type thing. So I learnt a new word. I'm not quite sure what at the age of however I was, how useful the word guerrilla was going to be to me. But nonetheless, I at least knew what it meant should I ever be needed to fulfill the role of a guerrilla. I like Joe's costume, but I'm a tie wearer. We do crave things in our own image, don't we? Narcissists that we are, he said, doing a podcast where all the talking is done by him. Now, she's so magical, isn't she, Katie? Now, I'm going to have to be good here, because left to my own devices, I would always choose moments from actors. I'm not going to be able to tell you where things were filmed, or locations are not my thing. Buy Richard Bignell's location book. But I will probably bore on about obscure things about the actors, because because in the book, this scene here where the Doctor and Joe meet each other and have a chat is a bit of a sort of timey-wimey thing, and was supposed to be a sort of witty bookend to the story, so that we got this scene again at the end, but from the other perspective. And it's interesting because they've got the yellow CSO cloth there, but they haven't replaced the background. Now, I'm not sure if they intended to, but you could, in the earlier shot, you could see the floor, which I think did cause a row between the designer and the David Marscoff-Jones and the director Paul Bernard. And I know Paul Bernard had done an experimental session to try, because CSO, colour separation overlay, is also known as blue screen. Although, I think I'm right in saying this is the first time yellow had been used, which means that Joe can wear a denim dress, or skirt, because blue would normally disappear with blue screen. So just no yellow clothes for Joe this week. But actually there's no CSO in operation there, because they didn't replace the background. I don't know if they intended to, but I certainly know there was a problem because they didn't paint the floor yellow or colour the floor, which meant they couldn't do, which I think meant they couldn't do the keying. And yes, there was certainly a row between, and I think Paul Bernard had a background in design. He's certainly a very visual, this is his first Doctor Who, and he's a very visually interesting director. He brings lots of sort of jazzy crossings between scenes, and some bits in the future that we'll see later. There's some really experimental and exciting stuff. This is a nice location, and Tim Condren is back again. He pops up a few times in Doctor Who. He even gets a line in the Web of Fear, because he's one of the soldiers in the Covent Garden fight, because they're all, I think, pre-Havoc, but stuntmen. And I think he goes, "They're coming, sir!" or something like that. That's a funny old running shot. Anyway, and he got acting parts. I saw him not that long ago in a very odd Nigel Neal play with Roger Daltrey, where he had actually quite a reasonable part, but he's there to get thumped and fall over. I love the Ogrons, don't you? I think their costumes are absolutely fantastic. The leather thing that they've got going on, but the colours, those dun colours, and they look really good, and they're really tall and sort of. I remember being slightly surprised, because on the book cover of Doctor Who and the Space War, the novel of Frontier in Space, the painting is of a sort of location shot of the Ogron, where the hair is sort of curled, and I thought for ages the Ogrons had a sort of sideburns that turned into a a hairy growth that went into the mouth, so they'd have a sort of almost like chewing their moustache. But actually, that's quite a nice design idea. It wasn't. It was just the angle that the hair was curling at. But yeah, I thought an Ogron had a sort of slightly moustache, but coming out of the side of the mouth and up the sideburns. So I was quite surprised when they didn't, when I finally saw them. But a bit like Chris, who's chosen this, I've only heard his introduction. I will hear his favourite things at the end of the appropriate episode. He's challenged himself with this one, and he's challenging me because he found Pertwee difficult to like. I've always enjoyed Pertwee, but I have to say when I first saw his stories, having imagined them from the Target books, they were always a disappointment, and I actually had to. Although this location stuff's great, it's fantastic. There's a real sense of scale about it. All those extras and you can see far into the distance. That's a nice big shot. But they were never quite how I'd envisaged them, and it was only much later. Actually, when I did my book with Rob Shearman, Running Through Corridors, and I sort of watched with a view to enjoying, and I watched in context, that I learnt to sort of love the Pertwee era as much as I did others. Now it must be something to do with the costumes, but I think the soldiers in this, the unit soldiers, look more soldierly than they sometimes do. And I don't know why that is. I think it must be the costumes. But Benton looks great in that outfit. And there's that brilliant picture of him, isn't there, with the walkie-talkie, which is a great shot of Benton, one of the publicity pictures. And here we are in the future. We don't know yet, but people have shiny faces, and the sets are lit green. And I love this bit. For all the wrong reasons. Now I think this was filmed at two different times. So the wide shot with the two of them and the back of the controller's head, where he goes, no complications, was filmed first, and then I think they retook the close-up because they decided the Ogrons had to speak in a different way, and he had a different line as well. So it was changing the content as well, but I guess maybe they did that because they didn't want the Ogrons to speak like no complications. They wanted them to speak. But it is a bit like yes, no complications. But fortunately, they don't have many lines. But the slow drawl, it does work with what they look like. I don't think you'd want them to come in and say, "My lord, I have brought you news from Rome," which is essentially sort of what he's doing, but in future speak. Although that would be quite funny if they were terribly Shakespearean. But there's quite a few Shakespearean monsters in Doctor Who. There are quite a few sort of drony monsters in Doctor Who as well. But I think the speech pattern they went for is better. Although the fact that now I'm not supposed to be watching this archly. The things I enjoy cannot be, oh, I like it because it's rubbish. Because I don't like Doctor Who because it's rubbish. I'm a great, I don't watch Doctor Who with, a sort of arch postmodernist eye, and I actually get a bit. Now I'm all for people to sort of enjoy the sort of campy, frothy nonsense that Doctor Who can sometimes be. Although again, Doctor Who was never really camp to me. It was always. I don't think I've got a good camp radar. Although my partner says I can be sometimes camp, and I don't know what she's talking about. No, I enjoyed Doctor Who because it was exciting and it was scary, and when it was funny, it was when it was meant to be funny, when the jokes were good or the actors did a witty thing. And I went through a period actually of getting very cross with people that sort of liked Doctor Who because they thought it was rubbish, partially because that's how the media sort of went. That was the story the media told. So then people at, say, university would say to me, "Oh yeah, Doctor Who was good because it was fit enough, wasn't it?" I was going, "No, you weren't watching it when you were 8, going, ha ha ha. Yes, I'm sort of rather archly askance at this. You were thrilled and excited and a thing that can do that is good quality. Now, obviously, we're watching stuff that's quite old, and so certain naiveties or ways of doing things that are dated, or looks that are dated, now can cause us amusement. But I'm less switched on to that, I think. Not that there is anything wrong with people enjoying Doctor Who in a different way from me, unless, as I say, they're sort of slagging it off, which does annoy me. So I'm when I think it's cheating of me. I think. I think it's cheating of me if I choose something because it's a bit rubbish. Because I'm looking to enjoy this on its own terms. But who knows? Who knows? This is early days for this podcast and this video, and I will probably be dictated to by what you want. Should anybody send me feedback and I'm not shouting into the void, love that, although I just saw a boom, but it's kind of worth it for that lovely sort of pan back. There's a real sort of sense of depth with the sets there in Dalekville, which I know is a common thing throughout the story, and I'll probably be talking about again. And I do like the costumes in this. I think it's Mary Husband, isn't it? And I think it's her only one. What do I know about Mary Husband? Not much, apart from whose husband wasn't her husband. I think she was the partner of Jimmy Perry, one of the co-writers of Dad's Army and the Crofton Perry, I'm not telling you which one he was, sitcoms for until he died, I think, at the time of his death. Mary Husband. And in fact, I think I put somebody who was writing something about this in touch with her, but I don't think they had much luck. 'Cause sometimes that happens. I get an email going, do you know where so-and-so is? And I go, well, I don't, but I'll find them. And I did. 'Cause that's how I spend my time sometimes. Unpaid. And there's a lot of people like that in the sort of world of Doctor Who, sort of, sharing knowledge and helping to add to the great sum total of things that we know and people that we track down. I'm often calling upon other people to go, have you ever tracked down so? I love this. I love in fact, I've done a podcast about this, one of my other podcasts, Indefinable Magic. I've done one about food, and I use this as the sort of the key text in my sort of Doctor Who foodiness. That's a nice shot of the sergeant's feet, and the way they're shooting the soldiers, they look. I think they look more realistic. And then this is night, isn't it? It's dark, and this is closing in, which is lovely, and that going into the tunnel and the time effect, that's really good. And we're back with Pertwee, yes, supping his wine. The Doctor is a pretentious wine bore, and yet I don't care, because Jon Pertwee does that very well, and in a way that to me is not annoying nor pompous, Chris, because because I think he pitches it just right. But what this did to me, I can taste that red wine because of the acting and because of the way that it's written. I can taste that Gorgonzola cheese. And when I was a kid, my mum was very much she grew a lot of our food because we didn't have much money. So, food wasn't just something that she'd worked hard for to buy. It was also something she worked hard for to bring up from the very bowels of the earth. So we had to, we were taught to appreciate food, and we would sort of try new things. And she liked things like blue cheese, so that was on the table. And I remember trying it, thinking it was manky old stuff. I mean, it's basically curdled milk that mold's grown on. But I love blue cheese, and now the oozier a cheese, the better. And I love John Levine's acting of the thwarted famishedness, and I remember I don't like the way Richard Franklin drinks the wine, because if that's a good wine, there's no way that would knock you sick if you guzzled it like that. Although actually, it's not as bad as I remember it. I remember him sort of draining the whole lot like it was Ribena. It's actually not as bad as that. So I might give him a pass. The memory has cheated. But the idea that, that food, that those complex flavours were something a gourmand like the Doctor, a man of sophisticated intelligence and experience, would sort of savour and enjoy. I got that idea that, so if I didn't like a food, it wasn't because it was nasty or horrible, it's because I hadn't quite sort of assimilated it yet. So I'd go back to it, and now a glass of red wine and a pokey gorgonzola would be right up my street. I don't drink anymore, so sadly I won't be having any of that red wine, but I can taste that, I can smell it. But that's sadly the only things around here that are sardonic and cynical are me, and age has done that. Not in a barrel. And one of the reasons I've chosen to go with this one, I've had a few friends. I sort of sent out a Mayday going, I'm doing this podcast. Choose a story, tell me some things, and a few came in. Chris was amongst the first batch. Lovely Chris Boyle. Check out his stuff. But the reason I thought I'd go with Day of the Daleks, because it's 4 parts, which seems to me, the standard. In fact, when I was growing up, I thought all Doctor Who stories were 4 parts. I was utterly baffled when I discovered, because my earliest memories are sort of Key to Time season 17 in particular. So 4 parts seems to me to be the sort of, the standard model of Doctor Who. Now, you two, sure, if that could be your great-great-great-great-granddad, obviously, and he sort of enjoyed doing that, which is odd because they're goodies. So they make very little effort not to kill anybody. Now this is, and one of the reasons I chose this one as well is that Shura, who we've just seen kill somebody in cold blood, is played by Jimmy Winston, who, as I record this, has just passed away. He was on my to-do list of people to contact. He was a keyboard player with a rock band called The Small Faces, which will mean an awful lot to those of you who know a lot about music. And he would have been a fascinating subject for an interview. But he is on the DVD. And Steve Roster, I know, who interviewed him for the documentary, said he was a great bloke and a fascinating interviewee. Gypsy Kemp, who's this radio operator here, was also known as Sarah Kemp, and acted under that name in Australia, where she became one of the few, and I don't know if there were any others, I'm sure there probably are, but she was a regular actress in Sons and Daughters, the Australian soap that we would get on in the daytime before Neighbours and Home and Away came and dominated the schedules. Sons and Daughters was the Australian import, and Sarah Kemp was a regular in that. And I think Katie Manning knew her. I don't know. I have talked to Katie about this, and I can't remember, because the problem is now when I interview people, got so many eyes on the recorders working and everything being right and blah blah blah, and actually doing my job, that I don't actually retain the information. So I have talked to Katie Manning about Gypsy / Sarah Kemp. I think they were mates out in Australia. She's no longer with us, sadly. Gypsy Kemp. This is glorious, isn't it? Jon Pertwee drinking a glass of whiskey whilst doing karate on a guy. That is so Doctor Who. That is so Jon Pertwee's Doctor Who. I think Pertwee's great. Now I never quite got to the bottom of why the factotums of the future have shiny faces and speak like that. It's to suggest that they are Dalek-y, I guess. I love that cut from the control room to the same shot of the controller in the Daleks control console. Although I don't remember that screen being as wobbly as that. And it's really wobbling in the wind. I remember that being sort of, and I've seen this many times, and as an adult, so this isn't a childhood memory. being faulty, that's flapping away, isn't it? But nonetheless, it facilitated that great cut. Is an enemy of the Daleks. I mean, you could just bore people to death, Goldie. They're not the greatest Dalek voices, but I'm here to celebrate. So let's jump over that. This is very this fading between Daleks is quite a nice way to herald the end of the episode. The Daleks are back. That is episode 1 of Day of the Daleks, which I don't know about you. I found plenty to enjoy in, and I haven't even mentioned Aubrey Woods. But I have to choose something that is my favourite thing about that episode, and I think it has to be the cheese and wine. It has to be. I think the fact that, because I remembered from the book the RHIP thing, and I wondered if that was something that was in the book, like a lot of things that then didn't make it into the TV version, like Trenchard's safety catch in the Sea Devils, and various other bits that have been really memorable in the books that turned out not to be in the TV episodes. That one is in the TV episode, and I love the look on John Levine's face. I remember thinking it's so unfair. So even though it's just a sort of little bit of comedy in the episode, it's actually very memorably done, and I particularly like what it says about sort of the enjoyment of complex food, and how your palate is something that perhaps needs to assimilate stuff in order to enjoy things that are complex and strange, which, you know, Doctor Who itself is. So it's the cheese and wine party. It's my favourite thing about episode 1. What is my friend Chris Boyle's favourite thing about episode 1?
My favourite part of episode 1 is Aubrey Woods. He's possibly the best thing of the entire story, to be honest. His performance just gets better as the story goes on. He plays the controller, and his stillness, his diction, oh, it's amazing. He completely sells the most ridiculous character in this episode. He looks like an evil Gary Newman, but he plays him with the gravitas of Daniel Day-Lewis. Superb. I'm also going to predict that Toby will mention Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory during this episode.
Well, you predict wrong. I barely mentioned Aubrey Woods at all, and I think subconsciously that's because I'm keeping sort of stuff in the back of my head in reserve in case I run out of things to say. And I love Aubrey Woods, and I know he's going to be an aspect of this that I will talk about a lot, but Chris has been quite canny there, I think, without realising it, because he's now chosen, as he says, he gets better as the story goes on, so I probably had Aubrey Woods up there in reserve to do for later episodes, but now can't, because Chris has chosen him. That's one of the rules. I'm not entirely sure what the rules are, but that's one of them. I can't pick something that's already been picked, or, I don't know, Wales gets set on fire. As I say, the rules are a bit vague at this point in proceedings. So Chris has chosen Aubrey Woods. I've chosen the gorgonzola and the wine, which was so memorable, and I find very enjoyable. And as I say, I like what it says about. I'm a firm believer in not wasting food and in trying new food, and there's nothing that I won't eat, actually, because I've gone back to try things having not liked them, and my life is better for it. So there we go. That's the end of episode 1. Go and crack open a Merlot while you still can. I'll go and get some Dairy Lee and Ribena, and then return here for episode 2. But that was the first one. I hope you enjoyed being in my house watching Doctor Who with me, and that you'll come and do it again for the next episode of Day of the Daleks. So I'll see you and speak to you then. Good night to you.
If you'd like to hear a little bit more from me, but you are too old to enrol on the A-level law course at the FE college that I teach at, but you are a fan of trivia that's liberally punctuated with bad language, then you can tune into my occasional podcast, Chris Boyle Didn't Know That. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, and I'm sure loads of other podcast providers as well. Thank you very much, and goodbye.